All right, we're trying a new thing. We've got a camera here, camera down here. The goal for this evening, I guess, is to work on the A-case patch. I've moved some things around a little bit, module-wise, since doing the July sets. And what I'm trying to do is prep this case and develop a patch that I think would be interesting to take out into the field to several different locations to record some sound into it, or play, I guess, sounds in real time into it, and have that kind of be transformed and turned into different things, depending on where we take one patch into a number of different locations. Talked about this a little bit in a previous video or two ago, and I decided I'm just going to do patch exploration here live, talk a little bit about what I'm thinking, because so far when I've been doing these kind of videos, I've gotten so much excellent advice and feedback and ideas from folks in the comments that I think there's a more than mutual benefit to just sharing this kind of public stream of, or stream of conscious publicly. Okay, so I'm going to start with trying to use primarily my tendril set of cables, which are these little right angle ones. If you haven't seen these, they're just patch cables that are right angles. The reason I want to prioritize these for this patch is really because of making sure that the case can close. And the case that I use is a black hole case is 7U104. I built out the inside of it with a bunch of kind of adhesive Velcro and pouches and whatnot to make the A case this kind of portable mobile instrument. And I've only really leveraged that a handful of times, and I've been just busy doing a whole lot of other stuff with this case since building that out. So I want to do that a bunch more, especially as the weather gets a little bit nicer. And I want to use these right angles to make sure that the patch can fit in there. Even though there is, I think, enough room for a traditional patch cable, I just don't love really bending and putting a lot of pressure on them. So one tweak to the A case that I talked about, I guess, in my last video was that I moved my output modules around. So this headphones out used to be in the B case over here, and the A case had the Befacco out V3, which I really enjoy just because it has the 1/4 inch. You can kind of see that if I just kind of tweak this camera, there it is. It's got the 1/4 inch out, it's got the headphone out, also at a 1/4 inch, and then it has the Q switch, which is really cool, super handy. I talked about that a little bit in my previous video, but I don't think I'm going to need that so much with the A case by itself, because again, the goal isn't going to be to play the case into like a PA or some other system. It's really just going to be captured here on the wave recorder. So end of chain is slightly different than before. So we're going to use this little 1U headphone out instead. Of course, that's going to be placed after the wave recorder, so I'm hearing what is being recorded. Just before the wave recorder, I have the Libra Legio, which is what kind of has been here in the signal flow. Before that, I have the Shackmat High Pass, just to make sure I don't get too many rumbly lows in there. I'll deal with, I guess, tidying up these cables at some point. I don't usually touch the kind of sealing and rube knob on the Legio throughout actually using the case. This color knob, though, I do use, so I want to make sure I have access to that easily. I don't care too much about blocking those, though. I think similar to many of my patches, the jumble hinge, although it's down here, I'm going to route back up through Starlab. So I'm basically going to reverb the whole mix. Do that. Don't worry, soon there'll be some sound that we can listen to. Whoops, I did that one wrong. There we go. It's a little loose there from still moving things around. Cool. Part of this process that I wanted to do early in terms of this project is just determining if I need to buy any more of these tendrils, because I think I'm a little bit low on having enough to really patch this thing completely while keeping everything, you know, super flush and locked down. I might even do some like Velcro loops or stuff to kind of really do some nice cable management for this, which I don't usually do. Once again, a quick pan over to that normal mess. Let's get this back. Cool. But for this, the Velcros might keep things steady, especially with the plan of like trying to keep one patch exactly the same and just change the input sound source. In that sense, this is turning from a synthesizer into like an effects pedal that also records, because it's completely kind of dependent on the incoming signal. I'm fine with that. I don't really care how it's, you know, categorized or what others might consider it. To me, it's just about trying to capture something cool and turn it into some other thing. The one component that I did want to change here, actually, let's maybe do this more simply first. This might be a little long. Got a couple of the tendril lengths, but I think I'm going to need to get some more. And I also kind of miss what I've established with most of my other patch cables, which is a red and black pair for audio, because almost everything I have is stereo, and then another color for, you know, modulation or CV or gates or something. That's been super handy. Can I reach that? Yes. All right. We're going to go just straight through for now to make sure that things are working. Let's turn everything else off here. Wow, I really didn't tighten any of these knurlies. Cool. All right, the mic I like to use is either this Audio-Technica, I think it's a BP4025. You can't see it because it's inside of a little Rycote BBG. Let me take that off there. There we go. There's the actual mic. You can kind of see the capsule. It's a stereo mic. So that means it's got a fun stereo cable, which, this being my only stereo mic and me not being a complete mic pro, it was neat to see the way the stereo cable looks. It's like an XLR with more pins. Hopefully focus gets that. And then on the other end of that cable you have just two with a red and black, or red and gray. So you can then easily plug both into your interface of choice, and away you go. I wish the Draw Analog input module had phantom power, because then I could save some HP while also being able to leverage stereo mics and whatnot. All right, I'm going to, let's see, can I bring this into frame? Cool, that's all right. Let's turn the case on. How about that? Start recording. Let's turn on phantom power. Let's get the gain just halfway for now. Of course, this is just going to be my voice. the moment. And where is our sound? Into jumble hinge, up into Starlab, back down. One, oh, you might have it, and it's just not in my headphones. There we go. No? Testing. These in Bluetooth mode. I'm gonna have to edit that to make it not as crazy. Okay, for starters, let's clear that out. Let's turn off jumble hinge. I need to turn my headphones way down because this is strange hearing myself now in my headphones while I'm trying to also talk and narrate. But for the sake of testing things, let's just turn some stuff up. 1, 2. Testing. One of the things about these microphones, the condenser mics, I've found when trying to do this kind of live stuff, is that the sound of the synth inevitably gets back into the microphone some way. So you just heard me click that regen button. I've turned the gain all the way down on the mic itself right now, which is why it's not picking up my voice and adding to the signal. But inevitably, whether I'm gonna take a loop on the looper or repatch something, those sounds get picked up by the mics because they're so sensitive that they become a part of the mix, which I think you could choose to try and fight it. And occasionally I will have be in scenarios where I'll turn down the gain on purpose when I know I'm going to be doing something. Let's tweak this camera here. But other times I will just let those things kind of be a part of it and not worry about it so much. So what do we have right now? We basically just have a Starlab as a pedal with a limiter applied at the end to really stretch out my voice. If we take away the dry, all right, that's all good fun. But one of the things I really wanted to try today was whether I could take the patch that I usually do, which is a kind of pressure points controlled granularization of the looper, where I will have one row of pressure points control the loop start point, another one control the speed, and another one control the loop length. Try to take those same three concepts and apply them to beads instead. So normally I would play something in the looper, take a quick loop, and I did this throughout all of the July sets. Take a quick loop. I never quantized those or triggered that looping because the goal of that was never to have something be necessarily on beat. I would have the kind of animation through these lanes of pressure points be on beat, but I didn't care so much that the original source material was. So in my head, I think I should be able to do that same thing by hitting the freeze on the buffer and then also getting some additional options in terms of the size, shape, pitch, and density aspect and the seed aspect of beads, which then I could take as an element, come through Panharmonium and re-loop at a larger time scale. Because normally I would make these small kind of granular noises come out of the looper and then pitch them around or re-grab them with beads. But I think if I take this sound source, bring it into the matrix mixer, let some of it go to beads, bring beads back into the matrix mixer, let some of that, maybe another channel out has to be panharmonium, I would think. Another channel out probably has to be the looper. And I think then this goes dry signal, bead signal, maybe panharmonium signal, maybe looper signal back in. And we're kind of merging these things together. I might need to use Jumble Hedge to kind of decide what does and doesn't have a feedback option in the matrix mixer and just joins the signal down here, especially like guillotine. Where do I want to put guillotine in the mix? To then bring those things back through into Starlab. So the first, I guess, thing to test is the role that beads could play here. So in order to do that, I want to, and I'm not trying to say that this is like a brand new way to use beads. I'm sure people do this all the time, but it is just not the traditional way that I've made use of it. And in the spirit of, you know, learning in public and developing a process in public, I'm just going to try and do this live and see what I learn. And maybe then again, somebody in the comments or one of you will be like, well, you should have done it this way. And it'll be the thing that clicks it for me, which has been happening a lot. All right, I need an out. I'm already running low on my longer tendrils, but many of these probably could have been pulled off with some of the shorter ones. Let's take this, hold on, let's leave this here. Then we will come out of beads. And go back in, wrong one, into the mixer and have that rejoin the out. So we're going to have the original mic signal come into the top row. It's going to come down straight to Jumble Hedge and out. It's also going to come down to beads, which will come back into the second row, which will come down and join this mix out to the Jumble Hedge. So both beads and the original signal will get the same filter and panning treatment in Jumble Hedge because they're both coming through on those two cables, but that's totally fine for me right now. So if we turn this up a little bit, should we begin to hear me? There we go. Now I've got Starlab all the way dry. And I can kind of hear myself. Let's send signal to beads, and we are. If I do that, if I test, there's beads, 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 beads. Okay. I think it's worth, if you hold the button on beads long enough, it switches into like that auto seed mode, which is what you're hearing now. If I turn this down, you're gonna just start to hear the beads version, which is lovely and strange. And maybe we can mess with the timing and maybe even the pitch to it's so loud in my headphones. It's so loud. Let's add some Starlab after it. All right. All right, as much fun as that is, that's not the experiment that I wanted to try yet. So let's turn these back to just the like regular spot. What I want to do is control a frozen buffer and then shift the time here. So I need to, I'm already going to bail on my tendrils. Well, maybe not. I've got a couple more. Let's take this first row out, which is how I've kind of always used pressure points, and come into time. And we're going to crank that all the way up. I don't remember if I need this noon to get the full range. I'm going to have to go back to the manual and check. I suppose we can just do a test here by, let's see, if I turn this up, we should be going into beads. Are we getting something? Is this right away? And is this a long delay? Yes. All right.
Yes. All right.
Trying to simplify what's happening here to make sure I'm testing the right things.
Trying to simplify what's happening here to make sure I'm testing the right things.
All right, that's on this last channel of pressure points.
All right, that's on this last channel of pressure points.
It's nearly an echo, even though I'm not using the delay mode.
It's nearly an echo, even though
but you can hear those grains
mode.
And the kind of like weird phasing that's going on.
But you can hear those grains and the kind of like weird phasing that's going on.
If I make these kind of a wave.
If I make these kind of a wave.
Where they're getting higher from right to left. As I
where they're getting higher from right to left.
Each pad this way, it should get closer to my own current voice. If I keep talking. So right now, it should be almost exactly in line with my voice. Here we've got a little bit of delay.
Here we've got a little bit of delay.
Less delay.
Less delay.
This doesn't need much. There's a big difference between these. It turns into one of those speech jammers pretty quickly.
It turns into one of those speech jammers pretty quickly. Sweet.
Now if I keep talking and saying a longer sentence and trying to do something that fills the entire buffer of beats. Talking, buffer, entire, thing that fill, do something, sentence, talking, buffer. Entire thing that fill, fills. Okay, I'm already very pleased. It's doing exactly what I hoped it would do, and kind of knew it would do based on, I've had beads since it came out, and so I'm very familiar with it. It's just one of those things where you like kind of develop a specific, typical use of a module. Not that you get like stuck with one. I'm saying a lot of you things. I try not to do that on here. I often fall into a situation where I tend to use a module in a certain way most of the time. Once I find a use for it that I like, I kind of grab onto that, and that becomes the way it gets used. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Like if it's doing something and helping you accomplish something that is part of a goal I have for it, great. I don't really care if I'm not using every mode of something just because it exists. But in this situation, it is nice that being able to transfer some of the typical things I would do here opens up a huge new time scale for performance. When I'm talking about just this case by itself, that can be a really big deal to try and create something that captures incoming audio, maybe freezes the buffer on and off on its own automatically on some kind of clock or cadence, routes that through things, creates a bigger pattern, feeds that into maybe a decaying looper. Now we're getting somewhere that I'm personally excited by. So the other thing I want to do is control the size of the loop by our second row. So let's do a similar thing here. I'm going to adjust all of these to be kind of a wave, or I guess a slowly increasing set of values. I have a tendency of not going all the way here, just because I know that the looper's range of values is, I think, -5 to +5, and I'm pretty sure Pressure Points puts out up to +8 on these. And so once you get to about there, the rest of it is useless and like doesn't do anything. You're already at the top end of the range. I think beats is also +5. This is why I keep setting my top knob to be about there instead of actually using the full range of these. If I'm wrong about that, that's fine. This is just a test, and it really doesn't matter whether I'm completely doing that or doing what I'm used to. Okay, my goal now is to have the grains get bigger further up this. Maybe let's just make these all the same. So we're only testing one thing at a time. I'm going to need to re-enable this. Okay. Okay. So when you're in this like auto seed mode, if you hold down the C button for long enough, the density knob then becomes like a clock for those seeds. It's a regular clock to the left of noon and an irregular clock to the right. So I've always interpreted these little barcodes as. So maybe this is going to be easier to hear if we dial that back. And now each little pluck What's interesting, or at least what I'm hearing, is that the start points start to shift. When you have a grain that is still playing after when another one starts, it seems to start almost from the end point of that previous grain, or wherever that playhead currently is. Because when I'm like this, oops, let's get this all the way back on. Go. This pluck, because that's what the word buffer.
talking and saying longer sentences and trying to use it
I guess I'm not sure why this last one starts with the word talking instead of being that sound, which it sounds like these are all just I guess it's possible that we're not at the beginning of the buffer and it's at the end and it's like looping around. So let's maybe shift all of these. Okay. All right, so it's not exactly doing the same thing that the looper does. And that might be because maybe I need to trigger the seeds directly instead of letting it trigger them. Or maybe there's just a slightly different relationship between multiple playheads that have to exist in a real granular module versus a singular playhead that is being thrown around. I will say, even with its slight difference in terms of functionality so far, not at all a deal breaker into how I'm thinking about using this. So let's add another row. Sorry, microphone. If you haven't seen one of these wind protection things on it, it's kind of a plastic mesh grid with some foam underneath it. And then what you usually do is you throw a dead cat over top and then cinch it around. And then that does a better job of wind protection than the little foam protection that it comes with. Because it's isolated, with a serious distance from the actual capsule and the mic itself. And then all of the fur, of course, does a crazy good job. All right, where were we? The last row, I want to control the pitch. And this is not going to be quantized or anything. And that's fine. Let's just crank that up. Yeah. All right, I might need to get the full range here. That sounds about right. Let's okay. So if I throw pitch all the way down, which I believe is 2 octaves down, and then I bring this up to about noon, I get essentially those 2 octaves back. It's touchy, maybe a little bit left of noon. But this is doing exactly what I wanted, because now let's go back to testing with just one thing at a time. This might be one of those things where I need to attenuate this a little bit, because this is probably way more range than I need. Ooh. There's some good proof that it's using the entire top range. I guess maybe the very end there isn't used. Sweet. All right. Now, let's start to put some things together. Let's grab a LFO, whatever speed, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to run it through repression, which probably isn't how you actually pronounce that, but that's okay. And I just want to semi-simulate what was going on with the July set. Talking off. Now, in theory, I should be able to unfreeze this buffer. And maybe we'll do something else into it. That's working great. Kind of no matter what you put into it, including my voice right now, can be really manipulated pretty far. I'm curious if we switch quality modes. Let's go to the orange one. The buffer here is a lot longer, which is that little bar chart thing, what that's showing. And maybe we can freeze it now. I think that's it for tonight. Very pleased. The potential now that the looper has in creating another time scale makes me really, really happy. The ability to replicate what I was doing there in beads, I kind of always knew was possible. It's nice to be able to prove that to myself and get to know a new way of doing it. There's going to be some kind of new sweet spots to get used to and find. I'm very used to throwing pressure points around with regard to where different speeds are and whatnot are on the instro. It's going to take a little bit to know, if I throw a pitch here, what's that going to sound like relative to the original signal. Same with loop length. And of course, that's going to be dialed in and can be dialed in a bit more. And there's a lot more potential here in how those things are attenuated and whatnot, which is very exciting to me. I think on the next episode or installment of this, maybe I'll film it, maybe I won't. My goal will be to kind of bring in panharmonium, bring back in the distortion somewhere, guillotine, which I can't not have. Figure out a little bit more creative way to clock things now that I've got the clock divider in here. I swear if Ritual Electronics had some kind of like subscription program where I could throw them $20 a month and they keep making the best 1U modules that exist, and I just get one each time they come out with a new one, whatever it is, I'd do that in a second. This whole row could be Ritual. I'd be very happy with that. I'm excited about having a clock divider finally, and maybe incorporating some of the uncertainty randomness to get more creative with how Optimix is being striked with regard to panharmonium, but then also with regard to how this is being clocked, or how I reverse the directions with the other aspects of the original brains here. And then of course we got to take all of that, bring it into the looper, and then back through everything again, hopefully with some super fun feedback, patching, and then we take that on the road and we bring it places. Let me see what it sounds like. That's the plan. Stay tuned. Let me know if you have any other ideas or thoughts on how to push this further. Till next time, thank you so much. Peace.